The emerald glow of the central hollow table pulsed with the spectral image of the disputed star system, bathing the hushed chamber of the Cathar hegemony in an unsettling luminescence. High above, the vaulted ceiling, intricately carved with the ancient celestial charts of the first expansion, seemed to press down with the weight of uncounted millennia of galactic history. Seated within the immense, arc-shaped council dais, the Grand Vizier Xylarn, his multiple ocular stalks swiveling with a barely contained agitation, regarded the projection with a mix of dread and profound frustration. His chitinous fingers, usually still as ancient stone, tapped an uneven rhythm against the polished obsidian armrest of his throne-like seat. Around him, the elected High Arbiters, representatives of the core Cathar worlds, murmured with a collective disquiet, their bioluminescent markings flickering with subdued anxiety. The system in question, designated Xylos 7 by Cathar cartographers, was strategically insignificant, a desolate collection of gas giants and asteroid fields at the frayed edge of the hegemony's charted space. Yet it had become the nexus of an unprecedented crisis, a point of friction with an unclassified species known only by their emergent stellar signature: humanity. "Repeat the analysis, Arbiter Tilak," Xylarn commanded, his voice a resonant thrum that vibrated through the chamber's thick, sound-dampening panels. The emphasis on analysis was pointed, laced with an unspoken demand for clarity where only obfuscation seemed to exist. Arbiter Tilak, a younger Cathar with a leaner physique and a reputation for meticulous data processing, shifted uneasily within his seat. His ocular stalks, a deeper shade of azure, focused on Xylarn before sweeping across the other council members. "Grand Vizier, High Arbiters, the data remains consistent. The vessel, designated Vanguard 01 by our long-range probes, persists in its anomalous behavior. Deviates from all known patterns of interstellar transit, engagement, or reconnaissance. Its trajectory is erratic, its energy signatures fluctuate wildly, and its structural integrity readings are inexplicable." Tilak paused, his bioluminescence dimming momentarily, a subtle indicator of his own internal struggle with the contradictory data. "Our initial classification placed it within a low-tier exploratory capacity, perhaps a derelict probe or an automated resource surveyor. But subsequent observations contradict this. It is clearly occupied, yet its operational profile defies logic." On the hollow table, the shimmering image of Xylos 7 shifted, zooming in on a single, faint speck of light near the system's primary gas giant. It was a crude, almost formless shape, lacking the elegant, aerodynamic contours of Cathar craft or the intimidating angularity of the Halaxian cruisers. Its simulated presence seemed to pulse with an inherent instability, as if on the verge of disintegration. This was the Vanguard 01. "Inefficiency," scoffed Arbiter Vithar, a venerable Cathar whose tenure on the council spanned 3 cycles of the Great Conjunction. His voice, raspier than Xylarn's, carried the weight of ingrained cynicism. "It is a primitive vessel, clearly, an emergent species stumbling into the void. Their engines are failing, their navigation is rudimentary, they are lost. A salvage operation, perhaps, or a diplomatic overture to guide them back to their home system. This does not warrant such consternation." A murmur of agreement rippled through a segment of the council. Vithar's assessment was comforting in its simplicity, aligning with the Cathar's preconceived notions of species newly venturing into the cold expanse between stars. The hegemony, in its long history, had encountered many such nascent civilizations, usually granting them protected status or offering technological tutelage until they reached a sufficient level of interstellar maturity. "If it were merely primitive, Arbiter Vithar," Xylarn interjected, his voice cutting through the murmurs with an edge of steel, "then why have our scout vessels, equipped with the most advanced shielding and weaponry in the hegemony, been unable to establish a stable observation perimeter? Why do their sensor readings consistently become corrupted when in proximity to the Vanguard 01? Why do our long-range communications fail to establish contact, even on universal hailing frequencies?" Tilak reactivated his internal data stream, and a series of smaller projections flickered around the central hollow table. One showed a Cathar scout, sleek and needle-like, attempting to maneuver around the Vanguard 01. The scout's trajectory was smooth, calculated, then suddenly, the image corrupted, replaced by static bursts and distorted spectral lines. Another projection displayed a complex frequency graph, showing Cathar universal hailing signals emanating towards the human vessel, only to dissipate into incoherent noise upon reaching an invisible boundary. The Vanguard-01 appears to possess a field, Tilak explained, his tone gaining a more urgent inflection. A localized distortion of spacetime, perhaps. It is not an energy shield in the conventional sense, nor is it a stealth field. It is more akin to a constant state of minor energetic turbulence. This turbulence, while seemingly random and weak, scrambles all Cathar sensor sweeps and disrupts our communication arrays. Our scout vessels report a pervasive sense of disorientation when they attempt close approach, their internal navigation systems experiencing microfluctuations, their crew exhibiting elevated stress responses, and an illogical aversion to sustained proximity. A collective ripple of unease spread across the council. Cathar vessels were marvels of technological integration, their crews highly trained to withstand the rigors of deep space and hostile environments. For them to experience such symptoms from a seemingly innocuous, primitive vessel was deeply unsettling. An aversion? Vithar scoffed again, though this time his conviction was noticeably weaker. Our warriors are disciplined. They do not avert from threats. It is not a conscious aversion, Arbiter Vithar, Tilak countered, his data streams flowing with greater confidence now. It is an autonomic response. Our medical analysts theorize it may be related to subtle, pervasive fluctuations in ambient gravitational fields, or perhaps ultra-low-frequency sonic emissions emanating from the vessel that our filters cannot entirely negate. The effect is insidious, not overt. It induces a profound, subconscious discomfort, a primal urge to withdraw. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the low hum of the chamber's environmental systems. Xylarn's ocular stalks fixed on the faint, pulsating speck on the hollow table. So we are to understand that this vessel, which appears to be on the verge of structural collapse, emitting chaotic energy signatures, and operating with a trajectory that defies all known principles of interstellar travel, is simultaneously generating a field that repels our most advanced scout craft and renders our observation efforts futile. That is the current assessment, Grand Vizier, Tilak confirmed, his voice barely a whisper. And they have made no attempt at communication, Xylarn pressed, a new line of inquiry forming in his intricate thought processes. None. Our passive scans detect no internal transmissions, no external hailing attempts. It is as if they are utterly oblivious to our presence, or utterly uninterested. Uninterested in the hegemony's presence within their sphere of influence, Vithar burst out, his outrage momentarily overcoming his earlier dismissiveness. That is an affront. The Cathar hegemony does not permit such casual disregard. Perhaps it is not disregard, Arbiter Vithar, mused Arbiter Eslara, a historian and xenologist whose placid demeanor belied a formidable intellect. Her bioluminescence, a soft, steady gold, suggested deep contemplation. Perhaps it is simply difference. We extrapolate from our own societal and technological paradigms. What if their internal logic, their very understanding of existence, operates on principles so divergent from our own that our attempts at communication are fundamentally flawed? A philosophical musing, Arbiter Eslara, Xylarn acknowledged, but we require practical solutions. This vessel, primitive or not, is entering a contested sector. Our territorial claims, while loosely enforced, are recognized by the Thalaxian Directorate and the Valori Confederacy. Any intrusion, particularly one that defies established protocols, could be perceived as a probing action, a precursor to territorial dispute. This humanity presents an unknown variable in an already delicate geopolitical balance. The fear was palpable now, not just of the unknown, but of the wider implications. The hegemony had maintained a fragile peace with its powerful neighbors for centuries, a peace built on meticulously defined borders and rigid diplomatic protocols. This Vanguard-01, with its baffling incompetence and simultaneous imperviousness, threatened to unravel that careful tapestry. We have sent a diplomatic flotilla, Xylarn continued, under the command of Commander Cathar, equipped with the latest universal translators and a comprehensive data package detailing Cathar culture and our benevolent interstellar policies. They are ordered to maintain a respectful distance, but to persist in establishing contact. Their report is due within the next standard cycle. Until then, our primary directive remains observation and non-escalation. A new projection bloomed on the hollow table, showing a cluster of Cathar diplomatic vessels, sleek and brightly lit, maintaining a cautious orbit around the Vanguard-01. The human ship, in stark contrast, still appeared as a barely coherent fluctuating. Anomaly, the contrast was stark, Cathar elegance and precision against human disarray. There is another unsettling aspect, Tilak added, his ocular stalks darting between the Grand Vizier and the Council. Our long-range gravitational sensors, unaffected by the Vanguard 01's localized turbulence, have detected fluctuations, not within the vessel itself, but in the surrounding spacetime. Minor, almost imperceptible ripples, as if the very fabric of reality is experiencing localized stress fractures in the ship's wake. The energy required to generate such effects, even on a minute scale, would be enormous. Yet, the Vanguard 01's power readings remain consistently low, barely sufficient to maintain basic life support, let alone generate exotic spacetime distortions. This new revelation sent a fresh wave of murmurs through the Council. Energy expenditure was a fundamental constant of the universe. To achieve such effects with negligible power was a paradox, a violation of known physics. It suggested either a technology far beyond Cathar comprehension or a fundamental misunderstanding of the observed phenomena. Both options were equally terrifying. "We must consider the possibility," Arbiter Ara interjected, her golden bioluminescence pulsing slightly faster now, "that we are not observing a malfunctioning ship, but a ship designed to appear malfunctioning. A form of advanced camouflage, perhaps, or a psychological warfare tactic. To induce confusion, to project weakness, to lull an adversary into a false sense of security before revealing its true nature." Vithar scoffed again, but this time his voice lacked its usual force. "Preposterous! What species would expend such resources merely to appear incompetent? It defies all strategic logic." "Unless," Ara countered softly, "their logic is not our logic, unless their strategic principles are alien even to our understanding of alien. What if this, humanity, derives strength from unpredictability, from operating outside the established parameters of galactic interaction?" Xylarn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature controls. Eslara's words resonated with a deep, ancestral fear of the unknown, a fear that had been largely quelled by centuries of Cathar dominance and technological superiority. But this humanity, with its bizarre ship and its illogical behavior, seemed to embody that ancient fear. A species that defied classification, that broke all the rules, that simply was. The Cathar hegemony, despite its vast power, was a civilization built on order, on predictable patterns, on the relentless application of logic and reason. This Vanguard 01 was anathema to their entire worldview. It was chaos given form, and chaos, Xylarn knew, was the most dangerous adversary of all. As the Council adjourned, the image of the Vanguard 01 continued to flicker on the hollow table, a spectral ghost in the machine of Cathar anxieties. The emerald glow seemed colder, harsher now. The hegemony had faced threats before, formidable and explicit. But this was something different. This was a riddle wrapped in a paradox, cloaked in an aura of unsettling, almost cosmic, discomfort. The Cathar had always believed they understood the universe. The Vanguard 01 was beginning to make them question everything. Commander Catharvar, a veteran of the hegemony's outer patrol fleets, felt the familiar thrum of his diplomatic cruiser, the venerated Accord, deep in his carapace. He stood on the observation deck, his 3 forward-facing ocular stalks fixed on the Vanguard 01. It hung before them, a blotch of incongruity against the distant, swirling nebulae of the Xylos 7 system. His diplomatic flotilla maintained a respectful but persistent distance, a shimmering ballet of Cathar vessels carefully orbiting the human anomaly. For the last 3 standard cycles, they had deployed every protocol in the hegemony's extensive diplomatic archives. Universal hailing frequencies broadcasted cultural data, scientific principles, and simple greetings in uncounted dialects. Automated probes designed for first contact had been dispatched, carrying peace offerings and detailed schematics of Cathar technology. Each attempt met the same baffling result: utter, impenetrable silence. "Commander," chirped his communications officer Lythar, her bioluminescent markings a faint, steady green. "Another burst of what appears to be localized atmospheric turbulence from the Vanguard 01. Our comms array is experiencing minor interference again." Catharvar merely inclined his primary ocular stalk. He had come to expect it. The phenomenon was constant, a low-level static that seemed to emanate from the human vessel, scrambling Cathar sensors and communications without ever quite being an overt attack. It was like trying to speak to someone standing in a perpetual, faint whirlwind. Are the atmospheric sensors still reading? G. Organic waste products? He inquired, his voice a low rumble. Lithar's bioluminescence flickered with a brief, almost imperceptible shudder. Affirmative, Commander. Trace amounts of methane, carbon dioxide, and a surprisingly complex array of nitrogenous compounds. Consistent with organic biological processes, but the concentrations are unusual, and the dispersal patterns are highly erratic. It suggests either extremely poor waste management or an almost deliberate disregard for environmental containment protocols. Tharvar stifled a sigh. More paradoxes. A species capable of interstellar travel, yet seemingly unable to manage its own bioeffluents in a contained environment. It flew in the face of every known principle of advanced civilization. Maintain passive scans, he ordered. Continue universal hails on a rotating frequency schedule, and prepare the long-range telescopic arrays. I want a visual even if it's imperfect. He had reviewed the Grand Vizier's concerns, the growing unease within the Cathar Council. The Vanguard 01 was causing significant political tension, not just within the hegemony, but potentially with the Halaxian and Valori. Its very existence, its refusal to conform, was a destabilizing force. Hours later, the telescopic arrays finally managed to punch through the fringes of the Vanguard 01's peculiar field, yielding an image, albeit grainy and distorted. It appeared on the observation deck's main screen, a live feed. The ship was worse than Tharvar had imagined. The spectral projections from the Council holotable had softened the brutal reality. It was a conglomeration of mismatched panels, visibly scorched and corroded in places. Patches of what looked like hastily applied repair materials marred its hull. Exposed conduits snaked across its exterior, some sparking intermittently with what appeared to be contained electrical arcs. A section near what might have been its primary drive flared with an erratic, orange-red glow, then subsided, only to flare again. It looked like a derelict that had been cannibalized from uncounted wrecks and then clumsily welded together by an amateur. By the ancestors, Lithar breathed, her bioluminescence dimming to a sickly yellow. It looks like a refuse hauler after an orbital collision. Tharvar felt a surge of profound disbelief. This was the vessel that had eluded Cathar scouts, disrupted their sensors, and instilled fear in the Hegemony Council. This monstrosity, it defied not just logic but aesthetics. Cathar vessels were paragons of engineering, sleek and powerful. Even the utilitarian freighters possessed an inherent grace. This human ship was an affront to all notions of functional design. Are those atmospheric breaches? Tharvar asked, pointing a primary ocular stalk at what appeared to be vapor trails occasionally escaping from various points on the hull. Affirmative, Commander, confirmed Lithar, her voice laced with growing horror. Minor, localized breaches. The internal atmospheric integrity is compromised, and the structural analysis indicates widespread fatigue and microfractures. It is, by all Cathar engineering standards, on the verge of catastrophic failure. How can it even function? Tharvar demanded, the question escaping him before he could suppress it. The words felt utterly inadequate to express the sheer incomprehension he felt. We have no explanation, Commander, Lithar admitted, her bioluminescence flickering erratically now. Its internal systems are running at suboptimal levels. Its life support is barely nominal. Its power core is registering, well, it is registering like a collection of unstable, disconnected energy conduits. It is quite simply an engineering nightmare. It should have disintegrated hours ago. Just then, a faint, almost imperceptible surge rippled across the Cathar sensors. The Vanguard 01, which had been drifting with a slight, almost imperceptible tumble, suddenly bucked. A new, more pronounced orange glow emanated from its stern, accompanied by a faint, crackling noise that somehow pierced the Cathar ship's audio dampeners. Commander, Lithar cried out, her ocular stalk swiveling wildly. The Vanguard 01 is initiating thrust. It is altering course. Tharvar watched in stunned silence as the human vessel, defying all its apparent handicaps, slowly, agonizingly slowly, began to accelerate. Its new trajectory was not towards their diplomatic flotilla, nor towards any obvious jump point. It was heading deeper into the Xylos 7 system, towards a region of dense, unexplored asteroid fields. Pursue, Tharvar ordered, his voice clipped and strained. Maintain distance, but do not lose them. Lithar, inform the Grand Vizier of this new development, and prepare for anything. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to his core, that anything with this species meant a complete departure from all known parameters of Galactic. See interaction. This was not a primitive species stumbling through the stars. This was something else entirely, something profoundly, terrifyingly baffling. And for the first time in his long, distinguished career, Tharvar felt a genuine, cold knot of fear settle in his gut. The Vanguard 01 was not just a ship. It was an enigma. And enigmas in the cold calculus of the galaxy often led to disaster. The chase, if it could be called that, stretched into agonizing cycles. The Cathar diplomatic flotilla, designed for swift, precise maneuvers, found itself constantly adjusting to the unpredictable lurches and stutters of the Vanguard 01. The human ship's trajectory was a drunken waltz through the asteroid field, ricocheting off gravitational anomalies, narrowly avoiding collisions with space debris that would have annihilated any conventional vessel. Yet, miraculously, it held together. The continuous, minor atmospheric breaches, the flickering lights, the sporadic bursts of noxious-smelling waste products, all persisted. It was a spectacle of engineering absurdity. Tharvar was now in direct, encrypted communication with Grand Vizier Xylarn. The hollow image of Xylarn's agitated ocular stalks projected into Tharvar's command chamber, radiating an almost palpable frustration. "Commander Tharvar, your reports continue to baffle the Council," Xylarn's voice boomed. "The Vanguard 01 is actively navigating an uncharted asteroid field, with structural integrity readings below critical thresholds, and it continues to evade stable contact." "Grand Vizier, with all due respect, evading implies intent," Tharvar responded, his primary ocular stalk swiveling to indicate the main view screen, where the Vanguard 01 was currently performing a bewildering tumble around a large, pockmarked asteroid. "Its movements appear entirely random, almost desperate. Yet it continues to move, and despite its apparent dilapidation, it is exhibiting an almost impossible resilience. Our analysis suggests that any Cathar vessel, even a shielded probe, would have been pulverized within the first quarter cycle of entering this field." "Then what is its purpose?" Xylarn demanded, his ocular stalks narrowing. "What could possibly justify such suicidal navigation, a military reconnaissance, a survey for rare resources, or simply a species so utterly devoid of self-preservation that they navigate the void in a glorified coffin?" "Our sensor arrays detect no weaponry, Grand Vizier," Tharvar supplied, reviewing the latest data. "No cargo bays of significant volume, no resource extraction tools, only the faint, almost imperceptible signs of organic life, and the peculiar gravitational ripples. The Vanguard 01 is simply moving. Its erratic path seems to serve no logical purpose." Just then, a new anomaly appeared on the Cathar sensors. A sudden, massive energy surge erupted from within the asteroid field, not from the Vanguard 01, but from a location further in. The signature was powerful, unmistakable, a Halaxian scout vessel. "Grand Vizier," Lythar announced, her bioluminescence pulsing with urgency. "A Halaxian scout designated Slayer 4 has just powered up its offensive arrays and is moving to intercept the Vanguard 01. Xylarn's image stiffened. "By the ancestors, the Halaxian Directorate has violated the non-aggression pact. They are encroaching on hegemony space and targeting an unclassified species." The Halaxian Directorate, an aggressive, militaristic species known for their predatory instincts and technological prowess, had long viewed the Cathar hegemony's more temperate expansion as weakness. Their presence in Xylos 7 was a direct provocation. "What are its intentions, Commander?" Xylarn barked, his voice laced with venom. "It is hailing the Vanguard 01, Grand Vizier, on a standard Halaxian challenge frequency," Lythar reported, her ocular stalks fixated on the sensor readings. "And it is charging its primary energy cannon. It appears to be preparing a disabling shot." Tharvar felt a cold dread. A disabling shot from a Halaxian energy cannon would atomize the Vanguard 01, given its pathetic structural integrity. And if the Halaxians destroyed the human vessel in Cathar-claimed space, it would be an act of war, precipitating a conflict that the hegemony had painstakingly avoided for generations. "Grand Vizier, we must intervene," Tharvar urged. "If the Halaxians destroy this vessel, it will be viewed as our failure to protect a nascent species and a violation of the Xylos 7 Accord. It will escalate the conflict unnecessarily." Xylarn hesitated, his ocular stalks rapidly analyzing the geopolitical ramifications. The Cathar diplomatic fleet was not equipped for combat, but allowing the Thalaxians to dictate events here would be an unbearable blow to hegemony prestige and a catastrophic trigger for wider war. Order Commander Cathar. Var to interpose his vessels, Xylarn finally commanded, his voice tight with controlled fury. A defensive posture only. Threaten full-scale retaliation if the Thalaxian vessel fires upon the Vanguard 01 or our fleet. This unclassified species, whatever its baffling nature, is now under Cathar protection. We will not allow the Thalaxians to dictate terms of engagement in our sovereign space. Cathar Var immediately relayed the orders. The venerated Accord and its escort vessels surged forward, their shields flaring into existence, their weapon arrays powering up in a defensive posture. They moved to position themselves between the Thalaxian Slayer 4 and the Vanguard 01, which continued its bizarre, lumbering course, seemingly oblivious to the unfolding drama. Thalaxian vessel Slayer 4, this is Commander Cathar Var of the Cathar Hegemony Diplomatic Fleet. Cathar Var broadcasted on an open channel, his voice modulated to project authority and unwavering resolve. You are in violation of established territorial accords and are engaging an unclassified species under hegemony protection. Withdraw immediately, or we will consider this an act of aggression against the Cathar hegemony. A guttural, rasping voice crackled back from the Slayer 4. Cathar diplomat, this sector Xylos 7 is disputed. This vessel is an unregistered anomaly, a potential threat. The Directorate does not tolerate unknown variables in its proximity. Stand aside, or you will be deemed complicit in its hostile intentions. Its intentions are unknown, Thalaxian, Cathar Var retorted, his shields now fully engaged. Our intent, however, is clear. We will protect this vessel. Any hostile action will be met with full Cathar force. The Thalaxian Slayer 4 paused, its massive energy cannon still fully charged, pointed menacingly at the Vanguard 01. The tense standoff lasted for agonizing seconds, a silent war of wills playing out in the cold vacuum of space. The Thalaxian vessel was clearly weighing its options, risk a direct conflict with the Cathar or back down. Then the unexpected happened. The Vanguard 01, still drifting through the asteroid field, performed another one of its signature inexplicable lurches. This time, however, it wasn't just a minor tremor. A sudden, violent shudder rippled through the human vessel. A burst of what appeared to be raw, uncontrolled plasma erupted from its stern, not in a coherent thrust, but as a wild, undirected explosion of energy. Commander, Lythar shrieked, her bioluminescence flashing scarlet. Massive energy spike from the Vanguard 01. It's not weaponized. It's like a drive core blowout. The structural integrity is failing catastrophically. The plasma eruption, though uncontrolled, was immense. It wasn't directed at the Thalaxian or Cathar vessels, but it expanded outwards in a chaotic sphere, engulfing the space around the Vanguard 01. The Thalaxian Slayer 4, caught off guard by the unexpected energy burst, inadvertently took a glancing hit from the chaotic plasma. Its forward shields flared violently, then shimmered and briefly failed, exposing its vulnerable hull. Damage report, Slayer 4, the Thalaxian commander bellowed over the open channel, his voice filled with alarm. Shields compromised, minor hull breach in Sector Gamma 7. This primitive vessel has attacked us. It was not an attack, Thalaxian, Cathar Var countered. It was a catastrophic systems failure. Your vessel was merely in the path of its uncontrolled energy release. But the Thalaxian commander was beyond reason. It has demonstrated hostile intent. We will retaliate. Prepare to fire, Slayer 4. As the Thalaxian vessel began to recharge its energy cannon, the Vanguard 01, still shuddering violently, seemed to twist and contort. Another, even larger burst of plasma erupted from its stern, this time with such force that it propelled the human ship forward with an agonizingly slow, uncontrolled acceleration directly towards the Slayer 4. It wasn't a deliberate maneuver. It was more akin to a wounded, dying Leviathan lashing out in its final throes. The Thalaxian commander, interpreting this as a suicide charge, panicked. It's ramming us, evasive maneuvers, fire, fire. The Slayer 4 unleashed a full volley of its primary energy cannon, not a disabling shot, but a devastating barrage meant to pulverize its target. The green lances of energy screamed through the void, heading straight for the Vanguard 01. Grand Vizier, they are firing to destroy, Katharvar exclaimed, his ocular stalks fixed on the screen, his internal processors screaming in alarm. Before Katharvar could even issue an order for his vessels to attempt to interpose again, something truly extraordinary occurred. The Vanguard 01, caught in the path of the Halaxian volley, buckled. Its already compromised structural integrity seemed to give way. The energy lances slammed into its hull. But instead of exploding, instead of disintegrating into a cloud of debris, the Vanguard 01 did something that defied all laws of physics and engineering. It absorbed the energy. The incoming green lances of Halaxian energy, instead of tearing through the hull, seemed to dissipate into the ship. The erratic orange glow from the Vanguard 01's stern intensified to a blinding white, then abruptly shifted to an angry, pulsing crimson. The atmospheric breaches sealed themselves with sudden, violent snaps, as if the hull itself was undergoing instantaneous self-repair. The exposed conduits retracted into the ship's skin, and the mismatched panels seemed to realign, coalescing into a more coherent, albeit still blocky, shape. The ship, which moments ago appeared to be a dying derelict, now pulsated with a terrifying raw power. The chaotic gravitational ripples intensified, creating visible distortions in the light of distant stars. And then, from the depths of its being, the Vanguard 01 emitted a single, powerful burst of pure, unrefined energy. It wasn't weaponized, not in the traditional sense. It was more like a massive, uncontrolled expulsion of the absorbed Halaxian energy, combined with its own mysterious internal power. The energy burst slammed into the Slayer 4. The Halaxian scout's shields, already weakened, collapsed entirely. Its hull, unprotected, glowed red-hot, then buckled inward. Its internal systems overloaded, alarms blaring, lights flickering wildly. The Slayer 4, battered and reeling, spun out of control, its engines sputtering, its weapon arrays silenced. It was not destroyed, but it was utterly disabled, crippled by what appeared to be an accidental, uncontrolled backlash from the very vessel it had sought to destroy. The space around the Vanguard 01 hummed with residual energy. The peculiar field it generated solidified, becoming a visibly shimmering barrier, a cocoon of energetic turbulence. The ship itself, though still appearing patched and utilitarian, no longer seemed on the verge of collapse. It looked functional and ominous. A profound silence descended upon the Cathar diplomatic fleet. Lythar's bioluminescence had dimmed to a dull, almost gray hue. Katharvar found himself utterly speechless, his logical processors seizing under the weight of the impossible. Grand Vizier, Katharvar finally managed to utter, his voice hoarse. The Vanguard 01, it absorbed the Halaxian attack, and then it retaliated, accidentally, but effectively. The Halaxian Slayer 4 is disabled. Xylarn's image on the hollow table was frozen, his ocular stalks wide with profound shock. The implications were staggering. This primitive vessel had not merely survived a Halaxian attack, it had inadvertently turned the attack into its own weapon. Its structural integrity was not a weakness, but a mechanism of energy absorption. Its erratic movements were not incompetence, but perhaps a form of adaptive maneuvering. Its dilapidation was a deceptive shell. "They did not attack, Commander," Xylarn said, his voice a low, horrified whisper. "They merely reacted. They are not a sophisticated military force. They are an uncontrolled force of nature, and the Halaxians have unleashed it." The Vanguard 01, now humming with a terrifying, contained power, began to slowly, steadily accelerate. No longer erratic, its trajectory became purposeful, cutting a clean path deeper into the asteroid field, leaving behind the crippled Halaxian scout and the stunned Cathar fleet. It didn't look back. It simply departed, a ghost of destructive efficiency. Katharvar felt a cold knot in his gut, a realization that twisted his previous understanding of fear. The hegemony had feared a powerful, cunning adversary. They had feared a primitive species stumbling into galactic conflict. But this humanity, they were neither. They were something far more terrifying. They were an entity that defied comprehension, a force whose very disorganization and apparent weakness concealed an almost cosmic resilience and an unwitting capacity for devastation. "Grand Vizier," Katharvar said, his voice barely a whisper, "the Vanguard 01 is withdrawing. It has entered the deeper regions of the asteroid field beyond our current sensor range." Xylarn finally stirred, his ocular stalks slowly regaining their focus. "Maintain pursuit, Katharvar, but maintain extreme caution. Observe, do not engage, do not provoke, and above all, Commander, do not make assumptions. This humanity, we understand nothing about them. Katharvar understood. The hegemony had just witnessed a fundamental redefinition of galactic power. The Vanguard 01 was not a ship to be underestimated or even feared in the traditional sense. It was a chaotic, unpredictable storm, and the galaxy's only sensible response, it seemed, was to run. Or, at the very least, to observe from a very, very respectful distance, and to pray they never be. Ekhemit's unwitting target. The age of Cathar certainty was over. The age of human unpredictability had begun. The reports from Commander Katharvar galvanized the Hegemony Council, shattering the remaining vestiges of their initial arrogance. Grand Vizier Xylarn, now presiding over a chamber steeped in palpable anxiety, initiated a galaxy-wide review of all known species, attempting to categorize humanity within existing xenological frameworks. The effort was futile. Humanity defied every parameter. They were a singular anomaly. Arbiter Tilak, his data streams now working in overdrive, presented updated analyses to the hushed council. Grand Vizier, High Arbiters, the Vanguard 01 has established a persistent presence within the deepest, most unstable regions of the Xylos 7 asteroid belt. Our long-range gravitational sensors continue to detect the peculiar space-time ripples, now with increased intensity, and the energy signatures, while still fluctuating wildly, indicate a constant state of reintegration. It is as if the vessel is perpetually rebuilding itself from the energetic debris of its own operation. And the Th-Alexian Slayer 4, Xylarn pressed, his voice tight. It has been salvaged, Grand Vizier, Tilak reported. Its commander, a T-Vac-class warrior, is requesting a full Cathar apology and reparations for an unprovoked attack by a Cathar-protected species. He believes the Vanguard 01 was a Cathar bioweapon, designed to cripple Th-Alexian assets without direct Cathar engagement. A collective gasp swept through the council. The Th-Alexian misinterpretation was predictable, yet disastrous. It deepened the diplomatic crisis, placing the hegemony in an impossible position. Explain the inexplicable or accept culpability for an accidental catastrophe. How do we explain a ship that absorbs energy blasts and inadvertently weaponizes them, Arbiter Tilak? Xylarn demanded, a tremor in his voice. How do we explain a species that navigates space in a vessel of such apparent disarray, yet possesses such incomprehensible resilience? Our xenological division has compiled a provisional profile based on the limited data, Grand Vizier, Arbiter Ara interjected, her golden bioluminescence a steady beacon in the chamber's anxious gloom. We are calling them humans. Their language, based on recovered audio fragments from long-range passive scans, fragments that defy comprehensive translation, seems to be rich in varied, often contradictory tonal shifts. Their cultural artifacts, derived from the same source, appear to be highly varied, ranging from complex mathematical equations to intricate artistic expressions of what appears to be organic life forms. Organic life forms? Vithar scoffed, though his earlier bluster was now replaced by a weary cynicism. They are preoccupied with their biology while navigating the void in a malfunctioning craft. Perhaps their biology is intricately linked to their technological advancement, Arbiter Vithar, Ara countered. Their vessel, the Vanguard 01, appears to be an extension of their species' very nature, chaotic, resilient, and profoundly adaptive. We theorize that their engineering principles prioritize immediate, pragmatic solutions over aesthetic refinement or standardized protocols. What we perceive as a malfunction, they may perceive as a temporary improvisational adjustment. An improvisational adjustment that absorbs energy blasts and cripples a Th-Alexian cruiser, Xylarn said, the irony not lost on him. That is not improvisation, Arbiter Eslara. That is a weapon of unforeseen potential. Or a defense mechanism built on the very principle of utilizing ambient energy, Grand Vizier, Ara mused, her ocular stalk swiveling slowly. Consider this. What if their vessel is not merely absorbing energy, but converting it, instantly and without loss, into structural integrity or propulsion? What if the Vanguard 01 is perpetually operating on the very edge of collapse because that is its optimal state? A state of constant, dynamic adaptation, where external pressures are instantly repurposed for internal resilience. The concept was revolutionary, terrifying in its implication. It suggested a fundamental paradigm shift in engineering, a rejection of the Cathar's meticulously planned, stable systems in favor of something fluid, reactive, and utterly unpredictable. "This is madness," Vithar declared, rising from his seat, his chitinous frame trembling. "We cannot allow such a species with such chaotic technology to roam unchecked. They are a danger to themselves and to the entire galactic order. We must intervene. We must either contain them or neutralize them." "Neutralize a species whose primary vessel thrives on absorbing energy and then expelling it in uncontrolled bursts," Xylarn said, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Are you suggesting we launch a full Cathar assault against this vanguard?" "One, Arbiter Vithar. What if their entire fleet, if they possess one, operates on similar principles? We would be feeding them our weaponry, strengthening them with every volley. No, that is a path to self-annihilation." The chamber fell into a heavy silence. Xylarn's words hung in the air, cold and stark. The Cathar hegemony, for the first time in centuries, was facing an adversary it could not defeat through conventional means, an adversary whose very nature turned strength into weakness. "Then what is our recourse, Grand Vizier?" Arbiter Tilak asked, his usual confidence replaced by a weary resignation. "The Halaxians are demanding answers. The Valori Confederacy has expressed concern over the incident in Xylos 7. The galactic community is observing. We cannot remain passive." "We must attempt communication again," Xylarn declared, his ocular stalks fixing on the council. "But not with our established protocols. We must devise a new approach, one that acknowledges their chaotic resilience, one that does not provoke but invites, one that does not demand but understands." "But how?" Vithar scoffed. "If they do not respond to universal hails, to diplomatic probes, to direct broadcast?" Arbiter Arras spoke again, her voice soft but clear. "Perhaps their communication is not through structured signals, but through patterns, through observation, through experience. What if they are not ignoring us, but simply analyzing us? What if our overtures of technological superiority or diplomatic protocol are perceived as aggressive or simply irrelevant to their fundamental understanding of interaction?" "What are you suggesting, Arbiter Arras?" Xylarn asked, his focus entirely on her now. "We must send a direct envoy," Arras proposed. "Not a fleet, not a probe, a single vessel, unarmed, unshielded, with a crew whose purpose is not to project power but to project vulnerability, to demonstrate that we are not a threat, to offer, not demand, and to simply observe them observing us." The proposal was met with stunned silence. To send an unshielded Cathar vessel, a symbol of hegemony prestige, into the proximity of the unpredictable Vanguard 01, was an act of profound risk, almost suicidal. "Who would command such a vessel?" Vithar challenged, clearly expecting no volunteers. "I would," Eslara stated, her golden bioluminescence burning brightly. "My expertise is xenology. My purpose is understanding. I will go. I will establish contact, or I will learn why it is impossible." Xylarn stared at Eslara, weighing the immense gamble. It was an unprecedented departure from Cathar protocol, a desperate maneuver in the face of an existential enigma. But the alternative, a galactic war triggered by a misunderstanding of a species whose very existence defied logic, was far worse. "So be it, Arbiter Arras," Xylarn finally declared, his voice firm. "You will command the Truth Seeker. Your mission, establish contact with humanity, understand their nature, and return with knowledge that will preserve the peace of the hegemony. May the ancestors guide your journey." The Truth Seeker, a small, elegantly designed Cathar research vessel, meticulously stripped of all visible weaponry and with its shields powered down, slowly detached from the Cathar fleet. Arbiter Arras stood on its bridge, her ocular stalks fixed on the distant, chaotic form of the Vanguard 01. Her chosen crew, a small contingent of xenologists, linguists, and medical specialists, moved with a quiet, somber professionalism. There was no fear in their movements, only a profound sense of purpose. As the Truth Seeker approached the outer fringes of the Vanguard 01's peculiar field, Arras felt the subtle disorientation that had plagued the scout vessels. It was a faint, almost imperceptible wavering in her internal balance, a slight pressure behind her ocular stalks. It was unsettling, but she resisted the urge to withdraw. "Commander, we are entering the human vessel's direct proximity," her navigation officer, a young Cathar named Rillar, reported, his bioluminescence a nervous flicker. "Their distortion field is increasing in intensity. Our internal systems are experiencing minor fluctuations." Maintain course, Rillar, Ara commanded, her voice steady. Passive scans only, no active emissions. We are here to listen, not to broadcast. The truth seeker drifted closer, a tiny, vulnerable speck of Cathar civilization approaching the incomprehensible anomaly that was humanity. The Vanguard 01 loomed larger on their view screen, its patchwork hull and intermittent sparks more visible now. It still looked like a derelict, an engineering abomination. Yet Eslara knew, beneath that veneer of disarray lay a resilience that had humbled the Cathar hegemony and crippled the Halaxian directorate. As they drew closer, a new phenomenon emerged. Not an energy spike or a communication signal, but a faint, rhythmic thrumming that seemed to emanate from the Vanguard 01. It wasn't a mechanical sound, but something deeper, more organic, a low vibration that resonated within the Cathar vessel's hull and, strangely, within Eslara's own carapace. "Commander, we are detecting a new form of energy signature," Rillar reported, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "It is not a weapon signature. It is a complex harmonic resonance, consistent yet subtly variable. It appears to be sound." Eslara leaned closer to the audio receptors, isolating the frequency. The thrumming intensified, becoming a low, resonant hum interspersed with softer, higher-pitched tones. It was not Cathar music, nor any known galactic melody. It was alien, yet strangely compelling, and then, woven into the sonic tapestry, a voice. A human voice. It was modulated, clearly an attempt at communication. The Cathar Universal Translator, after cycles of silence, flickered to life, struggling to process the novel syntax and phonetics. The voice, deep and resonant, resonated through the bridge. "Greetings, we are humanity. This is Vanguard 01, apologies for the inconvenience and the debris. We are experiencing unforeseen operational parameters. Do not approach too close. We are not in peak condition." The words, though fragmented and hesitant, were spoken with a surprising calmness, a steady inflection that belied the apparent chaos of their vessel. The voice contained no aggression, no fear, only a quiet, almost understated acknowledgement of their own precarious situation. Ara felt a profound sense of revelation. They were not ignoring the Cathar. They were struggling. They were apologizing for their own chaotic state. The Vanguard 01 was not a weapon. It was a vessel in distress, and its distress had unintentionally unleashed a cascade of unprecedented events. "Humanity," Ara broadcasted back, her voice carefully modulated to convey peace and understanding. "This is Arbiter Eslara of the Cathar hegemony. We perceive your challenges. We wish to assist. Our intention is not hostile. We offer aid. Do you accept?" Another pause filled with the strange, rhythmic thrumming. Then the human voice returned, still calm, still unhurried. "Aid is appreciated. Our primary objective is survival. And information, we are lost and quite broken, but we are learning, always learning." Ara felt a surge of something she hadn't experienced in millennia. Profound curiosity, mingled with a new, strange respect. Humanity was not a chaotic weapon. They were an enduring, adaptable force adrift in the cosmos, constantly on the brink, yet constantly learning, perpetually seeking knowledge even in the face of their own imminent demise. The Vanguard 01 was not a ship so badly designed it had to run. It was a ship so fundamentally human it had to endure. And the galaxy, in its blind fear, had almost destroyed the one species that might hold the key to its own future. The initial communication established, a fragile bridge built across the chasm of misunderstanding, Arbiter Eslara initiated the protocols for cautious, direct engagement. The Truth Seeker maintained its unarmed, unshielded posture, broadcasting only offers of assistance and expressions of peaceful intent. Slowly, painstakingly, the humans reciprocated. Their communications remained fragmented, punctuated by long pauses and odd, almost self-deprecating apologies for their vessel's erratic behavior. But the underlying tone was one of earnestness, and a surprising, almost childlike wonder at the Cathar's meticulous systems. The individual human responsible for their communications identified himself as Captain Elias Vance. His voice, even through the universal translator, carried an undercurrent of resilience, and a wry humor that Eslara found both baffling and endearing. "Arbiter Eslara," Captain Vance's voice echoed across the Truth Seeker's bridge, accompanied by the low, complex hum of the Vanguard 01. "We appreciate your patience. Our vessel is temperamental. We call it the Heap, An affectionate term, you understand. It tends to self-diagnose with extreme prejudice. Eslara found herself contemplating the implied meaning of self-diagnose with extreme prejudice. It suggested a form of radical, almost violent self-repair, which aligned with their observations of the Vanguard 01 absorbing Thalaxian energy and reintegrating its hull. Captain Vance, we observe your vessel's unique operational parameters. Our engineers are fascinated by its adaptive resilience. Would you be willing to share insights into its design philosophy? A pause longer than usual. Then a faint crackle of what might have been human laughter, a sound Eslara catalogued as another perplexing yet intriguing facet of their species. Design philosophy, Arbiter? Well, our engineers call it duct tape and prayers. We adapt, we jury-rig, we make D. Oh, with what we have. Our world was a bit short on resources after a few internal disagreements. So the heap is a testament to human ingenuity, or desperation depending on your perspective. The revelation was profound. The Vanguard 01 was not a marvel of alien engineering. It was a testament to improvisation born of necessity. Humanity had not stumbled upon some revolutionary physics. They had simply pushed known physics to its absolute, chaotic limits, patching and reinforcing a vessel that should have disintegrated light cycles ago. Their anomalous field, their spontaneous self-repair, their unintentional weaponization. It was all a product of a vessel constantly teetering on the edge of failure, its systems desperately repurposing any available energy to maintain coherence. The Cathar had misinterpreted desperation for design, chaos for strategy. Eslara relayed this to Grand Vizier Xylarn, who received the news with a mix of relief and renewed exasperation. The threat of an unknowable, unstoppable force was replaced by the challenge of understanding a species that built functional starships out of apparent garbage. They are resource-constrained, Grand Vizier, Ara explained, her hollow image projected into the Cathar Council chamber. They faced internal conflicts that depleted their planetary resources, forcing them to develop technology that is profoundly efficient in its material usage, even if aesthetically unrefined. Their vessel is a monument to scarcity and survival. So their weaponization was merely an uncontrolled, desperate reaction to a direct attack on a vessel already on the brink of collapse, Xylarn mused, shaking his primary ocular stalk. And the Thalaxian Slayer 4 was crippled by a cosmic sneeze. An apt if informal metaphor, Grand Vizier, Ara acknowledged. Captain Vance expressed deep regret for the damage, indicating that the heap, sometimes, overreacts when under duress. He also offered to share what limited technological data they possess to assist in Thalaxian repairs, though he warned that their schematics are a bit messy. The council deliberated, their initial fear morphing into a complex cocktail of fascination, bemusement, and a renewed sense of responsibility. Humanity was not a threat to be eliminated, but a struggling, resilient species to be understood and perhaps to be aided. A formal Cathar delegation, led by Arbiter Eslara, was finally invited aboard the heap. The docking procedure itself was an exercise in improvisation. The Vanguard 01 lacked a standardized docking collar, forcing the Cathar to devise a temporary magnetic clamp system, carefully maneuvering the Truth Seeker to avoid further destabilizing the human vessel. Stepping onto the human ship's ramp, Eslara was struck by the sensory overload. The interior was a labyrinth of exposed conduits, patched-up panels, and a pervasive, slightly metallic smell. The lighting was utilitarian, fluctuating between warm yellow and cool white, and the low, rhythmic hum of the ship's systems permeated everything. It was functional, but undeniably rough. Captain Elias Vance met them. He was a bipedal, bilaterally symmetrical being, roughly Eslara's height, though his musculature was more pronounced, his skin a pale, uniform color. His eyes, two forward-facing ocular organs, were a startling blue, direct and expressive. His facial features were a complex landscape of lines and furrows, conveying an impression of deep thought and enduring struggle. He wore a simple, functional uniform that bore the scars of countless repairs. "Arbiter Eslara," Vance said, extending a multi-jointed appendage towards her, a gesture of greeting the Cathar linguists had identified as a handshake. Eslara, after a moment's hesitation, mirrored the gesture, her chitinous digits enclosing his surprisingly warm, firm hand. "Captain Vance," Eslara replied, her voice carefully modulated, "it is an honor to finally meet you and your crew." Vance gave another of his wry, almost smiles. Honor is a strong word for a bunch of glorified mechanics trying to keep a tin can from falling apart in deep space. But we appreciate you risking your pristine vessel to visit our unique accommodations. As Vance led them through the narrow corridors, Eslara observed the human crew. They were a diverse lot, their physical appearances varying slightly, but all sharing a similar air of pragmatic resourcefulness. They moved with an easy familiarity amidst the chaos of their ship, expertly navigating the exposed wiring and uneven plating. They greeted each other with a rapid exchange of vocalizations and gestures, expressions of camaraderie that transcended the language barrier. They entered what Vance called the bridge, a small, cramped space overflowing with mismatched consoles and blinking lights. A central viewport, scarred and reinforced, offered a dizzying view of the asteroid field outside. The air here was thicker with the scent of ozone and something earthy, which Eslara's internal sensors identified as brewed organic stimulants, what humans called coffee. Our navigation system, Vance explained, gesturing to a console made of what appeared to be salvaged parts, is mostly guesswork. We plot a course, the ship decides to go another way, we adjust. It's a delicate dance between man and machine. Sometimes the machine leads, usually it's straight into an asteroid. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. Eslara noted the casual way he spoke of danger, the almost affectionate way he regarded his dysfunctional ship. It was profoundly alien, yet profoundly revealing. "Captain Vance?" Eslara inquired, observing the meticulous charts and diagrams displayed on a holographic console. "If your vessel is so prone to malfunction, how did you traverse such vast distances to reach Cathar space?" Vance sighed, running one of his multi-jointed appendages through a patch of fibrous growth on his head. "That's the million-credit question, Arbiter. We were on a long-range probe mission, testing a new experimental drive. Things went sideways. One minute we're in our home system, the next we're waking up light years away, with the heap barely holding together and no idea where we are or how we got here. We've been drifting, making repairs on the fly, trying to figure out where we are in this vast, beautiful, terrifying galaxy of yours." The confession was delivered without self-pity, but with a palpable weariness. Humanity wasn't an invading force or even a belligerent power. They were simply lost, caught in an accidental journey across the cosmos, desperately trying to find their way home in a vessel that constantly defied its own existence. "You speak of a home system, Captain Vance," Eslara pressed gently. "Are there others of your kind, other vessels, or is the heap truly a solitary voyager?" Vance's gaze drifted to the scarred viewport, to the endless, cold expanse of stars. "We are the first. The only ones who made it this far. Our people are still on our homeworld, trying to rebuild, trying to learn from our mistakes. We were meant to be a scouting mission, a quiet probe to see what was out there. The heap wasn't even meant for this kind of travel. It was a prototype, a proof of concept for a new energy absorption system. It's safe to say it exceeded expectations in the most catastrophic way possible. The new drive, the experimental energy absorption system, this was the core of the paradox. Humanity had not designed the heap to absorb energy blasts from Halaxian cruisers. They had designed it as a prototype for a new form of resource harvesting, a desperate measure to salvage what little energy remained after their self-inflicted planetary devastation. The Halaxian incident was an unforeseen, unintended consequence of this desperation. Ara felt a new wave of philosophical reflection wash over her. Humanity, a species that had nearly destroyed itself, yet retained an indomitable will to survive, to explore, to learn. A species whose greatest weaknesses, resource scarcity, internal conflict, technological improvisation, had inadvertently forged an unpredictable resilience that could humble even the most powerful galactic empires. "Captain Vance," Ara stated, her voice imbued with a newfound gravitas, "the Cathar hegemony and indeed the wider galactic community has much to learn from humanity. Your journey, however perilous, has illuminated the limitations of our own understanding. We offer you not just aid, but partnership. We will help you repair the heap, and we will help you find your way home. In exchange, we ask for your knowledge, your unique perspective on survival, and your resilience." Vance turned, his blue eyes meeting Eslara's multiple ocular stalks. The hint of a genuine smile touched his lips. "Partnership? With the hegemony, Arbiter Eslara, you've got yourself a deal. Just be warned, our resilience comes with a lot of noise, a lot of chaos, and a tendency for things to spontaneously combust. But we get the job done. One way or another, we always get the job done." And with that, the initial chasm between species began to close. not through fear or intimidation, but through a shared acknowledgement of vulnerability and the profound, enduring power of improvisation in the face of the impossible. The Vanguard 01, the ship that was so badly designed the galaxy's only response was to run, had inadvertently become the unlikely crucible for a new galactic alliance. The universe, it seemed, was far more complex and far more forgiving than the Cathar had ever dared to imagine. The integration of Cathar engineers and xenologists with the human crew of the Heap was a monumental undertaking, fraught with cultural and technological disparities. For the Cathar, accustomed to standardized schematics and predictable material, science, the human approach to engineering, was a perplexing blend of brilliant improvisation and outright madness. Human duct tape and zip ties became objects of intense, bewildered study. The concept of percussive maintenance, striking a malfunctioning component until it worked, caused considerable Cathar consternation. Yet amidst the initial confusion, a profound respect began to blossom. Cathar engineers, initially horrified by the Vanguard 01's apparent lack of structural integrity, began to understand the sheer ingenuity of its adaptive systems. The human ship was not designed to withstand external forces. It was designed to absorb them, to repurpose them, to convert potential destruction into sustained function. Its chaotic energy field was not a weapon, but the byproduct of a perpetually struggling, perpetually converting system, desperately reknitting its own fabric. Arbiter Tilak, initially dismissive, spent cycles aboard the Heap, meticulously documenting every inexplicable repair, every impromptu solution. His bioluminescence, once a nervous flicker, now pulsed with a steady, excited blue. "Grand Vizier," he reported to Xylarn via secure link. "Their warp drive, the experimental system that propelled them here, is not a drive in the Cathar sense. It is a localized space-time distortion engine, powered by the very energetic chaos it generates. It rips reality to create propulsion. Their problem is not the drive's function, but its catastrophic instability. It is a raw, uncontrolled force." Xylarn, now fully invested in understanding humanity, found himself spending more and more time poring over Tilak's reports, finding a strange, almost awe-inspiring beauty in the humans' chaotic resilience. The political tension with the Halaxians remained, but was somewhat mitigated by Captain Vance's earnest, if clumsy, attempts at apology and his offer of Heap schematics. The Halaxian Directorate, faced with the bewildering reality of humanity's unintentional power, found themselves in an equally confounding diplomatic quagmire. "They do not understand the concept of peak performance, Grand Vizier," Arbiter Eslara explained during one of the joint Cathar-Human Council meetings, held now on a neutral Cathar orbital station with Captain Vance and his senior officers participating remotely from the Heap. "For humans, functional is paramount. Optimal is a luxury. Survival is the driving imperative. Their vessel, the Heap, is a direct reflection of this philosophy. It is never truly repaired in our sense. It is always in a state of ongoing, active repair, constantly adapting to new stresses." Captain Vance, his image projected onto the central hollow table, nodded gravely. "Arbiter Arras speaks truth. We call it keeping the lights on. We learn by breaking things, then fixing them, usually with whatever we have at hand. It's messy, but it works, mostly." The Cathar, in turn, offered their vast resources and refined engineering techniques. They began to stabilize the Heap, not by replacing its unique systems, but by reinforcing them, channeling its chaotic energies into more predictable, albeit still potent, pathways. The human crew, initially wary of Cathar over-engineering, found themselves appreciating the steady hand and precise instrumentation their new allies brought. One cycle, as Cathar engineers worked alongside human mechanics deep within the Heap's core, a human technician, a small, wiry being named Jax, accidentally dislodged a critical power conduit during a routine calibration. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and a section of the core began to dangerously destabilize. A Cathar engineer, observing Jax's momentary panic, immediately moved to reseat the conduit using a specialized tool. Jax, however, reacted faster. With a frustrated grunt, he grabbed a heavy metallic wrench from his toolkit and with surprising force struck a nearby panel connected to the conduit. The panel, groaning under the impact, clicked into place and the conduit reseated itself with a resounding thunk. The alarms ceased. The core stabilized. The Cathar engineer stared at Jax, his ocular stalks wide with disbelief. "You struck it with an impact tool, and it functioned." Jax shrugged, wiping a smudge of grease from his brow. Yep, percussive maintenance. Sometimes you just gotta remind the machine who's boss. She's a stubborn old gal, the heap is, responds to a firm hand. The Cathar engineer, after a moment of stunned silence, let out a series of clicking sounds that Cathar linguists identified as exasperated amusement. He began meticulously documenting the percussive maintenance technique, its unexpected efficacy adding another layer to the enigma of human ingenuity. The true breakthrough, however, came during a joint Cathar-human expedition into the depths of the Xylos 7 asteroid belt, a region humanity had named the Graveyard, due to its frequent unexpected gravitational shifts and high density of unstable debris. The Cathar, with their precise mapping and predictive algorithms, had always avoided this region. Humanity, through necessity, had learned to navigate it, often by the seat of their pants, relying on their ship's chaotic adaptability. During this joint mission, a massive, unpredicted gravitational surge erupted from the heart of the Graveyard, threatening to pulverize both the Truth Seeker and the Heap. Cathar navigation systems, overwhelmed by the anomaly, began to fail. Panic rippled through the Truth Seeker. But on the Heap, Captain Vance remained eerily calm. "All right, folks, the Heap's having a bad day," he announced over the comms, his voice steady amidst the ship's shuddering. "Jax, get ready for an emergency power shunt to the gravity stabilizers. Ensign Tanaka, prepare for a slingshot maneuver around that big chunk of rock ahead. Arbiter Ara, hold on to something." The human crew moved with practiced, desperate efficiency. Jax, with a yell, slammed his hand onto a control panel, routing emergency power. Ensign Tanaka, her face grim, spun the ship with a series of frantic, precise adjustments, using the very gravitational anomaly that threatened them as a slingshot. The Heap bucked, groaned, and absorbed the gravitational stress, its hull humming with a terrifying, contained power. The Truth Seeker, following the Heap's desperate, improvised maneuvers, found itself propelled away from the gravitational surge, narrowly escaping destruction. Arbiter Ara, reeling from the sudden, violent movements, watched in awe as humanity rode the wave of cosmic chaos, bending it to their will through sheer, desperate improvisation. "Commander Vance," Ara broadcasted, her voice still trembling from the near disaster, "your navigation was extraordinary. How did you anticipate that maneuver?" Vance chuckled, a sound full of a raw, almost exhausted triumph. "Anticipate? Arbiter, we just reacted. The Heap gives us a lot of feedback when she's about to hit the fan. It's not pretty, but it's informative. We call it feeling the ship. Sometimes you just gotta trust your gut and ride the storm." The experience was a profound revelation for the Cathar. Humanity's understanding of complex, chaotic systems was not through prediction, but through adaptation. They did not attempt to control the chaos. They became part of it, flowing with its unpredictable currents. This newfound understanding had significant ramifications. The Cathar hegemony, in alliance with humanity, proposed a joint deep space exploration mission, not to conquer or exploit, but to understand the unknown. The Heap, refitted with Cathar stabilizing technology but retaining its core human adaptability, would serve as the vanguard, its unique systems uniquely suited to navigating unpredictable phenomena. The Truth Seeker and other Cathar research vessels would provide the scientific and logistical support. The Halaxian Directorate, initially outraged, was eventually persuaded by the combined Cathar-human diplomatic efforts. Faced with the bewildering reality of humanity's accidental power and the Cathar's unwavering support, the Halaxians begrudgingly accepted a reparations agreement, their warlike posturing tempered by a healthy dose of fear and confusion. The grand alliance between the Cathar hegemony and humanity was formalized in a ceremony within the magnificent Cathar Council chamber. Captain Vance, representing humanity, stood before the council, his simple, patched uniform a stark contrast to the ceremonial robes of the Cathar. "Grand Vizier Xylarn, High Arbiters," Vance began, his voice calm and steady. "Humanity thanks you for your patience, your understanding, and your willingness to look beyond our chaotic exterior. We may be messy, we may be loud, and our ships may look like they're held together with optimism and spit, but we are survivors, we are learners, and we are willing partners in this great, terrifying, beautiful galaxy." Xylarn, his multiple ocular stalks fixed on Vance, felt a deep sense of humility. They had judged humanity by their own standards, by their own fears, and almost unleashed a galactic catastrophe. But humanity, Through its very perseverance, its unexpected resilience had shown them a new way. "Captain Vance," Xylarn replied, his voice a resonant thrum that filled the chamber, "the Cathar hegemony has learned a profound lesson from humanity. We have learned that strength is not always in perfection, but in adaptability, not in control, but in resilience, not in logic, but in the enduring spirit of survival. Together, we will venture into the unknown." As the ceremony concluded, a new, massive hollow projection bloomed in the center of the chamber. It was an image from deep space, far beyond the charted territories of the Cathar, the Halaxian, or the Valori. It was an anomaly of unprecedented scale. A megastruck. Tiur. It was vast, ancient, and unmistakably artificial. Its intricate crystalline lattice spanned an entire star system, eclipsing the local star with its sheer magnitude. It hummed with a faint, steady energy signature, not chaotic like the heap, but impossibly ancient, profoundly powerful. "Grand Vizier," Arbiter Tilak announced, his voice hushed with awe. "Our long-range passive scans, recently upgraded with human chaotic energy dampeners adapted from the heap's own systems, have detected this structure. It has been there for millennia, undetected by all known galactic civilizations. It predates all known species. It is a cosmic wonder." A ripple of stunned silence swept through the chamber. This was not a weapon. This was not a threat. It was a monument, a legacy from an unimaginable past, hinting at civilizations and technologies that dwarfed even the Cathar hegemony. "And within its core," Eslara added, her voice a whisper, "our deep space sensors, now augmented by humanity's gut-feeling predictions for gravitational anomalies, have detected a signal. A repeating sequence, a message. It is ancient. It is universal, and it is a request." "A request," Xylarn breathed, his ocular stalks wide with profound wonder. "Yes, Grand Vizier," Arak confirmed. "A request for understanding, for connection, for knowledge. It asks, are you ready?" Captain Vance, looking at the incomprehensible megastructure, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Looks like the heaps got a new job," he murmured, his gaze fixed on the galactic wonder. "And it looks like humanity just found its new home, or at least its next repair project." The chamber remained silent, awash in the light of the ancient megastructure. The galaxy, it seemed, was far larger, far more mysterious, and far more full of wonder than any of them had ever conceived. And humanity, with its chaotic, resilient, utterly unpredictable nature, was about to play an unforeseen, vital role in its unfolding story. The Vanguard 01, the ship so badly designed, the galaxy's only response was to run, had not merely survived. It had paved the way for a galactic awakening. The real adventure for all of them had only just begun.